All right. So, talking about how to teach vocabulary in a systematic, multisensory way with using children's literature. So, first of all, choosing the book. You're looking for a book that has rich vocabulary in it, obviously. And so, the book that I have chosen to talk about today is Brave Irene by William Spieg. And anything by William Spieg or Patricia Polacco, those all have really nice, rich vocabulary words in them. And and I've gotten to where now, since we're doing a lot of virtual things and I don't want to violate any kind of copyright laws, I'm choosing books that are found on the Storyline online. So I have that book, and I'll show you what Storyline online is in a second if you're not familiar with it. And then this will be the next book that I'm doing. Both of those are on that Storyline online website. And so, pull that up. And so this Brave Irene, and this is read by Al Gore. So it just shows you that, that's where you go. You click on it, he reads it to them. And so it's done nice in a nice way there. And then once I get my book, the first thing I do is number the pages so that I can refer to those later. And then I go through with some highlighter tape, which is fantastic stuff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. It sticks to things, that comes right back off, it's reusable, and then it looks like you've actually highlighted it. So I go through and I highlight any and all interesting vocabulary that I find. I highlight figurative language, similes, metaphors, onomatopoeia, personification, etc. Multiple meaning words if I'm going to be teaching them. So for example, in here, the word ball is referring to like Cinderella's ball, a dance type thing. And so I highlighted that one so that I could talk about it and refer to that if I want to later. And so once I get those highlighted, then I get a spreadsheet going. And I've gotten to where I just have one I like, and I make a copy of it and then modify it. And so this is what this one looks like. And so I just have the title and the author up top, and I think I can make this a little bit bigger. There we go. And so on page 1, I had chosen 4 nouns that I liked. Now the bold ones are the ones that I'm going to explicitly teach. I'm going to make some pictures and cards for. So if you notice on page 2, I pulled 2 nouns, and then I chose a verb that I'm actually going to teach explicitly. So after I've chosen what I'm going to teach, you also, I will notice I will put at the bottom, if I will make note of any multiple meaning words I might want to pull out later. Stitches and ball in this case on page 1, muffler is on page 2, etc. Onomatopoeia, what page it's on, similes, metaphors, personification, etc. I did make a note on this particular book, other, simply because I felt like it was worth noting that the wind in this story is pretty much a character, and it's the antagonist throughout the book. And so I thought that might be something interesting to talk to the kids about beforehand, that there's personification throughout, and this is actually a character. The author chose to use character. So after I've compiled my list of things that I may want to pull from the book eventually, I then go ahead and take the time to summarize the book. And because I do it with my students, and I've tried doing it on the fly before, and I sometimes struggle with that. So I use somebody wanted, but so then. And that's what I teach my kids, that little rhythm, somebody wanted, but so then. And that's the technique that we go on off of to, I'll try not to touch my box, but that's the technique we use for summarizing. So if you notice, I have that somebody wanted, but so then, and that's what those little acronym on the side is for. And I go ahead and do that in advance. So Irene wanted to take the ball gown her mother made to the Duchess, but what was the problem? There was a blizzard and her mom was sick. So how did she try to fix the problem? She wrestled with the wind and made it to the palace. And then how did it end? The Duchess was happy to have her gown in time for the ball. And so I go ahead and summarize it down there. I do with some books, in some situations, if I want to make an AR test, and you can, like if you have Star, Renaissance, you can create your own test and from a book if you want. And so if this is actually questions from a different book that I had made. I just made a note to myself that if I'm going to do questions, I need to make sure I change them to fit this story because these questions are from a different story. So then what I do is I go and I Google search the bolded vocabulary. So I'm going to Google search pictures for the stitches and coaxed and muffler and helter skelter. And so once I find those, and I bring them over here and have them at the bottom of my page. So stitches, it's talking about sewing stitches in my book. I went ahead and pulled, and it was a little too gruesome, the stitches for medical stitches. So I found these, and we'll teach both. So that's a multiple meaning word. Coax, muffler, helter skelter. She was walking helter skelter in the blizzard with the wind. The wind was ill-tempered. She had to trudge through the snow. She scolded the wind. The wind was meddling. The Duchess was delirious. Something had to cease, and then she had to hasten herself to get there. So I choose the pictures with the vocabulary words that I am teaching. I've recently started doing where I go ahead and take a full page associated with each word, because when I'm teaching on a smartboard, it's a lot easier if I just have a word per page. So coax would get its own page. And so if I have that on the smartboard, we talk about what that means, stitches, etc. So there's that. Okay, and then after I've done that, I go ahead and print those pictures and have them ready so that I can teach them. Now these pictures are from a different book, but they're done so you can see them. So for example, and I put numbers on them. The first word I come across in the story is that I've taught is the word dawdle. The second word taught that I come across in the story is pumpernickel, and so on. Third one is gawk. So I figure out what hand motions I want to assign with these. So dawdle, the sign for walk is this sign language, and then I just have them do it with a D, and I have them do like a slow walk, like they're dawdling. And we talk about what dawdling is. Some of them may get up and dawdle. I may dawdle. Second one I had was pumpernickel. We talked about what that is. I just did the sign for eat because we eat pumpernickel. Have them count out the syllables, you know, all the things you can do with words. The third one on that particular book was gawk. And we talked about if we saw an army tank rolling down our road, we might be gawking at it. And I have the students gawk, and I have the students do the dawdle, and I have the students do the pumpernickel. Whatever hand motions I've associated, we practice them. And then after I've pre-taught the vocabulary, I go ahead and start to read the book, and I let them know in advance that I expect them. My keys are jingling, making them a little crazy. So I go ahead and tell them in advance that as I'm reading, when I come across the word dawdle, I will pause briefly and kind of look up and cue if I need to make sure that they are doing the sign for the motion associated with that vocabulary word. So we go through the book, we take the time to do the summarization with a somebody wanted but so then, and after we've done that, and this is a multi-day deal. This is not one day necessarily at all, especially me with small groups short term, but even if I were a classroom teacher, I don't think I would squeeze this all in one day. So then we go to the website, Wacky Web Tales. And this is essentially like Mad Libs. And so I let the groups choose which one they want to do. And so if I've taught this lesson to 3 different groups, I'll have 3 different Mad Lib stories with the same vocabulary. So the one that I chose, oops, let's see if I hope I didn't mess that up. I did. Okay, so let me pause this, and I'm going to prepare so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so I got it back on there. All right, and so when we get ready to fill in our Mad Libs, you know, the adjectives, etc., I have them refer back to this, and they are required to choose the vocabulary that is bolded, which is the one we taught, which is the one we had the pictures for and had motions for. They have to choose that first. So when I go back over there, you'll notice that the first two nouns in the story were stitches and muffler. The first verb was coaxed, trudge, and scold were my first verbs. So they had to do ill-tempered and delirious. They had to do coax, trudge, etc. If there aren't enough of the bolded ones, then they can choose from there. So for example, my nouns, I only had those two nouns that I taught, stitches and muffler. So if they had had a third noun to choose from, they could have chosen any of the nouns within these options. And if you don't do this, kids will tend to always pick dog or look around the room and pick something in the room as their noun. If you pick an adjective, it'd be nice or good. So just to get a little more interesting parts of speech and get them exposed to that is one reason to do this. So once they fill it in, you guys fill it in as a group, you would just click on See Your Wacky Webtails. And so, like one ill-tempered afternoon while their mom and dad were running errands, Taylor Swift and her little brother Santa Claus, anyway, goes on and on. She was making delirious progress in the backyard. And so it ends up with a funny story. The kids love this. And they want to take it home. They want to read it. They'll read it more than once. If I have 3 different groups that have read that book, well, we'll have 3 different stories with that vocabulary. And so they want to read their story. They want to read the other group's story. And so every time they're reading it, they're then exposed to that vocabulary yet again. So you can take it, highlight it, copy it, and then put it into a document and print it out for them to take home or to post in the hallway or both. Depending on how much you need things to be perfect, not me so much, I wish I were more like that, you know, you might want to clean it up. So instead of saying went to a garage and got a or an muffler, you can just take an extra few minutes and make sure that it makes sense. Make sure that your verbs are in the right tense and everything looks good. So I think that's all. I will say this is a time-consuming process, obviously, to do that. I mean, you have to buy the book, you have to highlight, you have to make your spreadsheet, and you make your cards. And I mean, it is a lengthy process, but you will have that forever. I've made this book, made the cards for that one particular book, and I have them forever. So I can do that from now on. Another thing I thought about doing is having it where teachers could, you know, if you had like a professional development day where everybody took one book and did this. Everybody bought a book, went through that process, or the library has bought a book, and you guys go through your process, and then it can be in the library to be checked out. And then you could, you know, within a reasonable amount of time, have 20 different little packets of things that you can take and use. So, all right, I think that's all. Hope that helps.